Here on Midlands at Home, we give you lots of advice and up-to-date information on property, whether you're moving house or looking for inspiration. Gardens and outdoor spaces are areas that we tend to think of later on, and yet they can add terrific value to your property. But where do we start, and how do we look after them through the seasons? Well, today we'll find out. On today's show, we'll be talking about landscape gardening, plus how to make the most of your garden all year round. I'm thrilled to welcome back Jonathan Shaw. Hello, welcome back.
Hello, thank you very much.
You were with us last week.
I was,
and
yes.
Of course, you're from Roon Landscape Design. You cover a lot of the patch across the big centre region.
That's right.
So thank you for being with us this week.
You're more than welcome.
Now, gardens are such a big topic area. We briefly touched upon it last week, but what an amazing transformation that you've done in this place that we're in today.
Thank you very, very much. It is an incredible transformation, this one.
They're like your babies. You see them from start right all the way through to fruition.
I do. And it is a great journey. It is an absolutely great journey. You can be part of a client's life for anywhere between 6 and 12 to 18 months, and it is a great journey, and you make a great deal of good friends with out of clients.
No, I bet you do. And I think really with gardens, because each garden is so unique, and we're going to actually have a little look now, take a little look at this beautiful garden that Jonathan has designed. So Jonathan, talk us through this beautiful garden and how it all began.
Well, when we originally came here, it was literally just lawn. It's a brand new build, and obviously when you tend to buy new builds, you tend to find that you've only got the lawn out the back, and you've got about 6 slabs.
You're lucky you've got lawn, aren't you, really?
Well, it's very true, and it's not particularly done on great topsoil, that's for sure. So we had a complete blank canvas here, and the client wanted a garden that created different spaces so that she could enjoy her garden, because she downsized from a larger property with a larger garden, and she wanted to encapsulate that and create that within this space.
Yeah, it's lovely. I love this archway that you've got here going right through. It just draws you right in, doesn't it, to the bottom of the garden?
It really does. Because this space is dissected into 3 sections, this is like a fast track. This is from the back door right the way through to the rear of the garden, and then obviously to our right, then we have a wonderful seating area. That's our main social area.
It's lovely. The plants look so well established. So how old is this garden?
Well, this garden's actually only been here around about just short of 3 years now. But what's great about perennial planting is that you tend to get their maturity straight away.
Right.
So if you say you plant something in the spring, it's more or less guaranteed that by the end of the summer you will have mature perennials in your garden.
Yeah, so you've got your seating area, you've got, like you said, your fast track area, this pathway down
Yes.
here, and then of course the garden at the bottom. So
that's right.
It makes you you're just intrigued, aren't you? You were talking
Yes.
about different separate areas of the garden.
That's right.
It makes you want to go and explore.
Well, that's absolutely right. And being a small garden, it is amazing what you can actually achieve with that.
Yeah.
So people always think that you have this small garden and there's not much I can do with it. I've just moved in, I'm going to put a few borders in and this type of thing. But look what you can actually achieve by splitting it up. The garden looks 10 times bigger than it was before.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
It is incredible what you can do with
Yes.
a smaller space. It just shows you that, that's the beauty of having someone like yourself, a garden designer, to really bring it to life, and that's what you've done.
Absolutely. And another thing that tends to happen when you buy a new build is that nowadays all the houses are crammed in quite considerably, and you tend to have a lot of windows, a lot of neighbours overlooking your garden. And again, this is a great example of, if you're putting trellises in the right place, you're putting trees in the right place, you're completely screened from anybody in a small garden on a new build.
Yeah, you really are. Talk us through plants. So what plants have you used, Josh, around the garden? So first of all, down this lovely walkway, talk us through what we've got.
Well, to your right here, this is a Rudbeckia demii. It's an absolutely wonderful little plant. It's at its mature height right now.
Okay.
What I like about this plant is that it's that last ray of sunshine in the summer. So everything else has come up and gone down. You've had the blues and the reds, and then you've had the light yellows, and then suddenly just towards the end of the summer,
Best of
Rudbeckia
colour.
absolutely shines out, and it's a wonderful plant. And as you can see, it's really quite dense down below, but then it's just got these wonderful little sunshine heads.
How many plants have you put in there to get that lovely big spread?
There's about 3 in there. So whenever
Is that a general rule of thumb, 3 or 5 in the odd numbers?
it is absolutely right, but again, it all depends on the size of the borders. For instance, where we have the Rudbeckia here, which is implanted in 3s, you have then a purple Verbena bonariensis, which is only planted, yes, which is only one of those in there, because that is just a structured plant, so it's a structured element to the border.
Okay.
To our left then, down this side, now because this is quite shady, because we've got the climbers growing up over the pergola here, we've got something called Brunnera, which is in here, which is, the flowers are very similar to like little forget-me-nots, and we all remember those from our childhood, and it's really very, very pretty. And then next to that, the common name of the begonia is the elephant ear, and again, that will just have beautiful pink flowers on it, but the contrast between the plants is absolutely great. Even that those leaves are very, very similar in shape, you can see the textures in them are very, very, very different.
Are there a lot of staples that you tend to use? So when you're doing gardening, I'm definitely going to be certain to use this plant or this one?
Without a doubt. Well, it tends to be the compositions that I use. So, for instance, you can get something that has a very large, bold, glossy green leaf, and then you could put that next to something that has very, very fluffy, textured leaves, and then next to something that's grey or maroon or something like that. And it's really about how all those things come together. So, for me as a designer, I tend to use very similar plants in each of the gardens. However, each garden has its own microclimate, so there are certain changes that take place there.
It's very much like our interiors with textures, like clothing with textures and layering up. It's exactly the same principle.
That's right. That's absolutely right. But as you can see, it works exceptionally well here. In such a small space with all these wonderful plants. The grasses and just so much vibrancy, so much colour, and so much denseness to it.
Yeah, absolutely. What a garden. It certainly entices you, Jono, just to get outdoors, doesn't it? Because I think sometimes as Brits we can be a little bit cooped up. It's nice just to get outside.
No, absolutely, without a doubt. And what a great example of, having a space that you can actually just thoroughly enjoy.
So how do you, if we talk about enjoying this beautiful space, where do you start?
Where do you start? Now, that is a very good question. Realistically, I think what you need to be thinking about is how you want to use that space. So if you know that you want to be able to use it for socialising, or you want it to sunbathe, or you want it for the kids to play, or even if you have dogs or cats or that sort of thing, you have to really think about what it is that you want out of that space. And I think once you've done that, then you can then start to think about how the layout is going to work.
What do you think is the number one thing that you would say when designing a garden? What's the first thing that you must think of?
Well, there are 2. One is definitely how you want to use the space, which is what we just touched on. The other one is how much you want to spend. What is your budget? Because you can have a very large budget, you can have a minimal budget, but you can still create really quite wonderful design with small and large budgets.
I think budget is an important one, because I think when people think garden designer, they think, oh, that's going to cost a lot of money, but not necessarily so then.
Not at all, absolutely not at all, because it's clever design. You can use very expensive materials, you can use cheap materials, but the layout is still exactly the same. So all the line is still the same, and it works both ways. So you can either have a very smooth granite flooring, or you can go down the sandstone flooring, and it's
vinyls, all sorts, can't you, when you're indoors?
Absolutely, yes.
So I suppose it's the same with plants. You can have really expensive plants. You can have other plants that are more fillers that might not cost so much. So, like you said, budget is a really important area to remember.
Plants are great, because plants are the cherry on the cake, if you like, when it comes to designing and building gardens. And they are actually the cheapest element of a garden. You can spend more on plants if you go for larger shrubs and that type of thing. But if you're working with perennials or grasses, you tend to just buy them in their 2-litre pots, and they will mature. Like we said with regards to this garden earlier, they grow into the maturity straight away.
Of course. So would you recommend, because I know when my mum and dad were doing their garden, lovely big open space, and some plants they bought that, and it cost a little bit more, that the trees were a bit more established rather than the tiny baby pots, others from seed. So it's knowing whether do you buy it as a small seed, or do you actually buy it where it's more established?
But it's quite an interesting one, because if you go to a garden centre or your local nursery, you do tend to find that you could buy a 2-litre pot of whatever plant it is for say £6.99 to £8.99 or something like that. But if you do tend to go down the route of bringing in a garden design company that can build it for you, you tend to find that they are buying direct from the wholesalers and selling on to you for perhaps £2.12.
Yes.
So it means that your money and your budget is going constantly further and further.
Yeah, so it's just keeping hold of that. It's like anything, isn't it?
Yes.
Budget, it is really trying to make sure that if you've got a plan,
That's right.
try and stick to it. But I suppose like anything, it can kind of evolve or...
Without a doubt. And I think that what you don't want to do is you don't want to buy too larger plants, because they take time to establish in the root systems in the ground. But if you then go too small, they might not put on enough root systems and then not grow perfectly well anyway. So always stay medium in the road, I would say.
Yeah, and mix it up with perennials and then having...
Perennials, shrubs, biennials, annuals, they're all absolutely great. And I think worked well in great compositions and good planting design, you can have a garden very much like this. It will be so incredibly rewarding.
Yes. Now, after the break, we are going to be looking at talking about your garden, taking care of it through the seasons, which is fabulous. So don't go anywhere. Maybe grab yourselves a cup of tea, and I very much look forward to seeing you after the break. See you then. Welcome back. Now, before the break, we were discussing how gardens can add value to your home as much as 10%. But how do we maintain our gardens? How do we look after them through the seasons? Jono, I think gardens are very much a labour of love for a lot of us as well. They're our escape. I know my mum loves it when she goes into the garden.
Right.
I can lose her for days. She just loves being outdoors and just keeping on top of everything.
Absolutely, they are. And what's very odd is that a lot of people might not think that they are actually green-fingered in any way, and perhaps they're slightly scared of gardens, but as soon as they get the bug, my golly, then they're in there and you can't stop people buying plants.
I think that's the word. You do get you do get a bug, don't you? Especially when you have got a little bit of time, because they do take a little bit of time, don't they? I think even if you have a low maintenance garden, you still need to keep on top of it.
You do. Low maintenance is something where you may have gravelled pathways, and you don't necessarily have any lawn, or you might have bark with landscape fabric and that type of thing on the borders, but plants still need to be tended for. You tend to find that you will do as much maintenance on perennial planting as you would do on shrubs.
So there's not kind of a hard and fast rule if you want a low maintenance garden that just do this, that and the other. It's just there's always going to be a little bit of work. Like I said, even if you've just got lawn and you
always.
There's edging and everything else.
If a client came to me and said, I do not want to do any work in my garden at all, and I do not want to have a gardener or anything like that, then it really is very minimal. Yeah. Very, very minimal.
Now, how do we look after them through the seasons? If we talk, we're now going into autumn, so how do we look after them?
Well, autumn is the time of year where you start to put your garden to bed. So basically what you do is you tend to cut down your perennials, some back down to ground level, others to around about 1/2 foot. And it also gives you the opportunity to perhaps leave some seed heads or the feathers of grasses or things like that, so that they look great throughout the winter. So if you can imagine the snow or the the frosts and that type of thing on them. Once you've cut them down and you've done any little bit of weeding that you need to do, we'd always suggest that you put a little bit of bone meal, which is a slow release fertilizer, and you would put that on the soils, and really it's ready for bed. It's going to be like that then until the spring. Now spring is then, we all love spring.
Oh, it's a lovely time of year.
All the bulbs come up,
and,
absolutely. It is absolutely stunning. And it's just after that lull in the winter where we haven't really done a huge amount, we may have just cleaned up any of the leaves left over from the autumn and that sort of thing, giving us the opportunity to clean out our gutters and that. But the spring is a wonderful time of year because everything starts to grow up. But there is an edge warning in spring, and that is it's the time of year that you must really try and keep your weeds down.
Okay.
Whilst everything is growing up, everything's growing at the same rate of knots. So if you think of the perennials, everything's starting to grow up. So the best thing to do is to keep your weeds down, and so to allow the perennials to grow into one another, which then throughout the summer months you won't need to do any weeding at all. The other thing to look out for in the spring is that a majority of shrubs need to be pruned in the spring to make sure that you're going to get the best possible flowers and berries then come the autumn on the shrubs. through into the summer, mow your lawn. Mow your lawn and water.
Is that time of year that you think, oh, here we go, every week
you
you've got to do
you definitely wouldn't think with the amount of rain that we've had
True.
of late that we would need to do any watering. But it's amazing actually how soils do dry out, even if throughout wet seasons and wet periods.
But if anybody's new to gardening and thinking, I would like to, when do you start planting for daffodils
Yes.
and tulips?
Yes.
Is there a right or wrong time of year?
Bulbs is normally done around about October time.
Okay.
So you can, I think you can tend to buy a majority of them from garden centres and that type of thing around about end of August, beginning of September.
Yeah.
But you'll tend to find that they're on sale really around to the mid-November. Get them in the ground and make sure that you're following the procedure on the back of the pack.
Yes.
And plant them up, and you will reap the benefit fully right the way through into the spring. I think what is a great little tip for everyone is that if you look at the different types of bulbs that are available, so if you start off with snowdrops.
Oh, love snowdrops.
Absolutely wonderful. Follow them by the crocus. After the crocus, you've got the daffodils. After the daffodils, you've got the tulips, and after the tulips, then you've got the alliums. And so this then will spread right the way from around about January, maybe sometimes the end of December, right the way through till June. So you're going to have bulb flowering right the way through.
Lovely picture there, lovely imagery of all those beautiful flowers.
Yes, absolutely wonderful. Because spring can be a little bit of a dull time very early on in spring, so January, beginning of February. So to have these bulbs as a splash of colour,
gorgeous.
Wonderful.
What about the autumn and the winter? Because sort of things die down a little bit. There's not so much colour. How can we create that fabulous colour in our gardens?
Well, autumn is actually great for the toned down colours. So for the oat colours and that type of thing from the grasses, and also the last few perennials that are coming through, your sedums, as we spoke about earlier with regards to the Rebecchias, as we're going into the autumn. Winter is a little bit more difficult. Winter tends to be more bedding plants. People like putting out their bedding plants in pots and that sort of thing. So there's not a huge amount of colour, but it literally is only going to be for 2 or 3 weeks before the bulbs come up.
Yes, and we're so cold, we're wrapped up in the warm anyway.
Well, yes, we like our log fires at that point, don't we? Yes.
Now, we briefly touched upon lawns, which I certainly know from lots of my friends, their husbands are very, very specific about their lawns and their lawn care.
It's definitely a manly thing, isn't it? Without a doubt.
It is, isn't it? How to care for your lawn. So, I mean, what top tips have you got that we can keep a lovely pristine lawn?
The main top tip, and I will say this to so many different clients, is that you should never have your mower set on too much of a low setting.
Okay.
It should be slightly higher.
Right.
The lower you go, the grass doesn't tend to green particularly very well. So what you tend to find is that you might be scalping or it dries out too quickly. So to actually have it that little bit longer, you'll end up with a much greener lawn for longer.
So you may have to mow it a bit more regularly, but it's worth it.
But it still grows the same rate.
Yeah,
It just literally is. You just have it longer than you normally think you should do, and that is one big mistake that people make.
Okay.
The other thing is that if you want a good lawn, feed it and weed it.
I was going to say, do you feed it? Yeah.
Yes.
How regularly do you feed your lawn?
Well, we tend to offer our services through a lawn servicing company.
Yes.
So what would happen is that they would come out and they would suggest to you that we'd come in the spring and we'd come in the autumn and we would weed and we would feed. But there are many different weed killers for different things that are in the lawn. So if you've got moss problems, or if you've got the perennial weeds and that type of thing. But they will also sort out drainage problems. They'll aerate.
Could they is it scarify?
That's right. They can take out all the moss and everything like that. So they are really, if you're wanting to spend time and a little bit of money on investing on your lawn, I think that is definitely the way to go. But why not give it a go yourself first? That's what I believe in.
Or alternatively, we are actually sat here on astroturf, which I'm very impressed with, I have to say.
Artificial grass.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It has come on so much in the last 15 to 20 years. It is absolutely amazing, and you can get grass that has artificial moss in it and that type of thing.
Can you?
No, you can. It is absolutely amazing stuff. And if you're wanting a low maintenance garden that you don't want to mow the lawns, or you've got a small space that you want that element of greenery in it, What a
always
great
looks
opportunity.
perfect, exactly the same length. And also, I suppose, you can have really fancy patterns. So if you wanted a lovely round area with astroturf,
You're not dictated by the width of your mower.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And you hoover it, don't you?
You can hoover it, you can brush it, and it is so easy to keep clean. Just a little word of advice as well. When you lay it, you always lay it with the darker side, because it all flows slightly basically like that.
Yeah.
And it's best to always lay it towards the house, so that you always get that matte green rather than the shiny green on the other side.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive. Do you think our gardens need to reflect our architecture? So if you are living in a Victorian house, then it reflects that. If you've got modern contemporary, that you've got that garden to reflect, or do people kind of mix it up a bit?
I completely agree. I do think that it should work with the architecture of a house. However, sometimes it is great to completely contrast something. So if you have a wonderful Victorian property, yet you've had a great contemporary extension on there with glass doors, and what a wonderful opportunity it is to take that contemporariness out into that space and contrast the building itself. However, you can still add very Victorian traditional materials in that space, and so that you're taking influence really from both spectrums.
Yeah.
And I think that works very, very well as well.
Because we were talking about that earlier, weren't we, with interiors? So people might have a Georgian build, they might have a Victorian, Edwardian, but then inside they'll have a really modern, trendy bit of furniture or a really contemporary kitchen.
No, that's right.
Rather than a traditional kitchen.
Well, that's right. And we've done a number of gardens for people that live in Cheltenham, and they have wonderful Regency houses, and you walk in and you cannot believe how contemporary they are on the inside, whitewashed walls and this type of thing, and it's a great opportunity for us then to extend that out into the garden area.
Yeah, so you're used to covering so many different styles. What's been your biggest achievement?
Oh, blimey. I think for me, over the last 13 years, it has been a garden that we did where it was about 4 acres, and it was literally just planting. It was just planting, and it was a great opportunity to create these very different areas. So we had a woodland garden, we had an alpine garden, a vegetable garden, but they were on a huge scale, and a lot of trees that we brought in, and it was absolutely wonderful. It was just wonderful to be part of something and be part of many, many teams.
Yeah, of course. We will have to go and see that. You will have to come back.
Yes,
well, thanks
absolutely.
for watching Midlands at Home. I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.